I worked in the White House for over a decade, but I never saw anything like this. I never shared or told this story to somebody before. 3 days before Charlie Kirk was shot, a barefoot man appeared inside the east wing of White House. No cameras captured him, no guards reported him, but what he said to me that morning, it was prophetic, and what followed the next day proved every word was true. Before we continue, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, I can tell you this unbelievable story. It was September 10th, 2025, just over a month ago, and the air in Washington carried that early autumn tension, warm sunlight, long shadows, and a stillness that made everything feel like it was holding its breath. I'm Martha Keene, 56 years old, senior administrative assistant in the East Wing of the White House. I've spent nearly 2 decades here, walking the same polished hallways, memorizing the rhythm of printers, phones, and footsteps. I used to joke that time moved differently inside these walls, slower, quieter, like the building itself was reluctant to age. But that morning, time didn't slow. It broke. I arrived at 7:45 a.m., coffee in hand, a folder of scheduling notes under my arm. Outside, the lawn was still damp from the sprinklers, sunlight washing the fountain in gold. Inside, the usual Monday energy buzzed. Aides whispering, phones ringing, security radios murmuring somewhere near the residence wing. It was normal, ordinary, the kind of ordinary that makes you feel safe. But as soon as I sat at my desk, I noticed the clocks. The one above my door said 8:41, my monitor said 8:47, my phone screen flashed 8:45, 3 devices, 3 times. I laughed under my breath, thinking the network had glitched again. Still, it unsettled me. In this place, precision was everything. A 7-minute difference might as well be chaos. Then the printer behind me hummed on its own, spitting out one blank sheet. No header, no text, just silence, and a page curled soft as a sigh. That was the first moment I felt something was different. Not wrong, not frightening yet, just different. I thought it was nothing. I wasn't even close. At 8:58, the line on my desk phone blinked. East Wing, Keene, static. Then a voice, male, calm but low. "Ma'am, can you look outside your window for me?" "Excuse me?" "South lawn," he said. "We're seeing a figure. Just confirm if you can." My chair creaked as I turned toward the window. The light made everything too bright at first, glare bouncing off the fountain, white petals from the flower beds flicking in the wind. And then I saw him, a man walking barefoot across the grass. I blinked twice, thinking I was seeing wrong. But no, he was real. Bare feet on the lawn, stepping slow and even, clothes so light they looked like part of the air. Linen, maybe. The sun caught him in a way that shouldn't have been possible, not that early. His face was calm, almost peaceful, and though he was at least 50 yards away, I felt certain his eyes met mine through the glass. "Sir," I said quietly into the phone, "there's someone out there, walking barefoot." The line went dead. That's when the heater stopped clicking. It was as if every sound in the world fell out of the room. No printers, no footsteps in the hall, no distant hum of traffic from Pennsylvania Avenue. Even the light froze. I mean that literally. The shadows from the blinds stopped moving. I remember standing there with my hand on the desk, afraid to breathe. And then, just as suddenly, it ended. Noise returned, bright and ordinary. The flag outside started moving again. Someone down the hall laughed. I checked the clock. Still 8:58. I told myself it was exhaustion. I'd been working long hours that week. But deep down, something had shifted. I could feel it like a pulse in the walls. At 9:06, Peter from security knocked on my door. "You reported something on the lawn?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "A man, barefoot." He looked like— I hesitated. Like he didn't belong. Peter frowned. "We checked. No one's out there. Cameras glitched for about 10 seconds. Full whiteout. Must have been sunlight. We'll recalibrate." He smiled, but it was the kind of smile people wear when they don't believe you. When he left, I turned back to the window. The fountain sparkled, clean and quiet. The same ordinary scene I'd seen 1,000 times. I kept one thing to myself. When that man looked up, I'd felt something move through the glass. Not heat, not fear, warmth, gentle, deliberate, almost like recognition. The morning kept going. Calls, emails, routine, but I couldn't shake that feeling. By 9:37, every device in my office was lying again, my wall clock frozen at 9:37, my phone flashing 10:02, my monitor stuck at 9:29. I pressed my hand against the wall, half expecting to feel the building's pulse, half afraid I actually might. Then I heard it, the faint sound of a page falling. I turned. The air around me looked heavy, slow. The paper hung midair longer than it should have before settling to the floor. And that's when I saw him again. He was standing across the hallway, barefoot, calm, bathed in a thin gold light. For a moment it felt like the air itself bowed toward him. I stepped forward, not thinking. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He only looked at me. Really looked, as if the question itself didn't need words. His presence filled the corridor in a way that defied every rule of logic, every security measure, every sense of reason. Then, as if time had blinked, he was gone. The hum of the lights returned, the sound of keyboards, laughter, phones. I staggered backward, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. That was the moment I realized something impossible had entered this building, something no protocol or camera could explain. And I swear to you, even now, remembering it a month later, I can still feel it when I close my eyes. That golden air, that steady calm, that silent moment before the world remembered to breathe again. Because that morning in the White House, time didn't pass. It listened. That morning, after he vanished from the hallway, I sat at my desk pretending to type. My fingers moved, but nothing real came out. I could still feel that gold warmth across my face, and it wasn't just a trick of the light. It stayed with me, like a presence you can't name but know is still standing somewhere near. I thought it would fade. I was wrong. At 9:45 a.m., the phone rang again, sharp enough to make me flinch. It was Peter from security. "We need you to confirm something, Martha," he said. His voice sounded more clipped than before, like he was trying not to say too much. "Step into the hallway. Look toward the main doors." I did, and I swear to you, I could feel my pulse echoing in my throat. Through the glass entrance, sunlight poured in brighter than before, flooding the marble like liquid. The man, barefoot, linen clothes, that same quiet stillness, was now standing inside the White House. That shouldn't have been possible. Every layer of security, every clearance badge, every metal detector in this place, none of it could explain him. 2 uniformed guards were there too, frozen like statues, their radios flashing but silent. The man looked up, calm as the air before rain, and said something I couldn't hear. I took a few steps forward, whispering before I could stop myself. "Who are you?" He turned his head slightly toward me. The light behind him shifted, and for a moment his outline blurred like heat rising off pavement. His voice carried softly across the hall. "I was sent to speak." "To who?" I asked, my voice trembling. "To whoever is listening," he said, and he smiled. Not a pleasant or forced smile, but the kind that holds sorrow and peace at once. That was when the hallway clock stopped again. The ticking froze at 9:47 a.m., same as the second hand that had paused earlier that morning. Only this time, the computers didn't glitch. They all shut down completely. Every monitor in the East Wing flickered to black. Even my phone screen dimmed. It was like time itself decided to bow out for a minute. Why did no one else react? That question still keeps me awake some nights. Everyone else moved normally. Papers shuffled. A printer down the corridor hummed. Footsteps echoed faintly. But for me, it was like the world had split into 2 layers, and I was standing in the thinner one. I walked closer to him. I didn't care how insane that sounds now. "You shouldn't be here," I said. This is restricted access. Who brought you in?" He looked at me the way a father looks at a frightened child, gentle, patient, seeing through my words. "No one brings light into a place," he said quietly. "It finds the way." Something in me cracked at that. I don't know what. Faith? Doubt? Maybe both. Because as he spoke, a strange, peaceful gravity settled in the room. The air smelled faintly of rain, though the sky outside was clear. And then, for the briefest second, I saw movement. Secret Service agents rushing toward him from the far end. They were shouting, their faces tight with alarm. But he didn't flinch. He didn't even step back. He only turned his palms outward as if to bless the chaos racing toward him. I thought they'd tackle him to the floor. They didn't. When they reached the spot where he stood, their momentum just slowed. The air thickened around them. Radios dropped from their hands. The men's eyes flickered with confusion, like they were suddenly half asleep. He turned his gaze back to me. "Do not fear what the world loses," he said softly. "Fear what it forgets." Then, nothing. He was gone, vanished as if the light had folded around him and sealed shut. The agents looked at each other, then at me, one of them muttering, "Where the hell did he go?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My knees felt weak. Later, Peter found me sitting on the floor by the reception desk. He crouched down, his voice low. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I have," I said. He laughed lightly, but there was no humor in it. "All our feeds went out for 45 seconds. We've got nothing. Every external camera froze." 45 seconds, I repeated. "That's how long he was here." He frowned. "Who?" "The man," I said. "Barefoot? He talked to me." Peter hesitated. "Martha, you've had a long week." I met his eyes. "I know what I saw." He sighed and stood up, patting my shoulder. "Let's just keep this between us, yeah? Until we figure out what happened." I nodded, though I knew deep down he didn't believe me. The rest of that morning moved like a blur. Word spread fast that the system outage reached other federal networks, though no one explained why. By noon, I'd answered the same 5 questions from 3 different supervisors, each more dismissive than the last. "Glare," one said. "Optical illusion," said another. "Stress, maybe," offered a third, softer one. I let them believe what they wanted, but inside I couldn't shake what he'd said. "Do not fear what the world loses. Fear what it forgets." What were we forgetting? By 1:15 p.m., I stepped outside for air, the first time all day. The south lawn gleamed bright and perfect, as if the morning had never happened. But when I looked down, near the edge of the path by the fountain, I saw it, an imprint, faint, partial, but unmistakably a bare footprint pressed into the grass. I almost called someone over, but something in me stopped. That moment felt too sacred to share. I crouched down, touched the edge of the grass, and for a brief second, it was warm. I thought I was losing my mind, but I knew the truth. Something divine had passed through this place. Now, a month later, when I walk those same corridors, I still glance at the window every morning. The fountain looks the same. The light looks normal. The clocks tick in unison again, but I can't unsee that footprint or unhear that voice. And every time I check the time on my monitor and it blinks a minute ahead, I stop typing, because part of me wonders if time isn't breaking again, just gently reminding me that it remembers what I saw, even if no one else does. The next day, as usual, I came to the office, hoping that nothing would bother me today. But I was wrong. The hum started then, deep under the floor, like distant power lines trembling in the ground. At first, I thought it was the heating system again, but the vents were quiet. Everything was quiet. The air conditioning, the printer across the hall, even the faint hallway chatter that usually never stopped, all gone. And then, from somewhere down the corridor, a man's voice echoed, sharp and urgent. "Turn on the TV!" The shout startled me so much I nearly dropped the pen I'd been holding. I fumbled for the remote, pressing the power button, my hand shaking. The screen came to life with a red banner flashing across the bottom. breaking news. Charlie Kirk confirmed dead. Details developing. The anchor's tone was calm, but there was something off. Too careful. Too rehearsed. My stomach turned, as if the air itself had dropped 10 degrees. I didn't know Charlie personally, but I'd followed his work. He was loud, sure of himself, unafraid of fights that others avoided. And just yesterday, that barefoot man had said to me, "Truth reveals itself through silence." Now here I was, standing in a silent room, watching the word dead blink red beneath his name. I kept thinking it couldn't be real. Maybe they'd made a mistake. Maybe it was one of those awful rumors that spread before anyone verifies it. But my phone started buzzing so hard across the desk that it rattled against the glass. Message after message poured in. "Did you see this? It just happened. You worked near comms, right? What's going on?" All blurring together. That's when I noticed the light. The sunlight through my window wasn't moving, not flickering, not shifting, not dimming, just still, like the entire world outside had been caught in a photograph. And in that frozen gold, I saw him again. Across the south lawn, right by the fountain, stood the barefoot man. The same calm presence I'd met hours earlier in the corridor, only now he wasn't just standing. He was radiant. His form glowed like fire through glass, gold and white, entwined in a light that wasn't painful to look at, just impossible to describe. My eyes burned, but I couldn't look away. Then I heard the hallway erupt, agents shouting, radios crackling. I ran to the window and saw them flood the lawn, at least a dozen of them, forming a wide circle around him. Their rifles were raised. The man didn't move, not one step, not one gesture of fear. Someone pounded on my door, yelling, "Keene, get away from the window!" But I didn't move either. I couldn't. I pressed my forehead against the glass and whispered, "Please, no." I didn't even know what I was asking for. Maybe for them to lower their weapons. Maybe for this not to be real. Maybe just for the world to start moving again. And then, as if he heard me, the light around him changed. It grew brighter, sharper, and in one impossible instant, sunlight passed through him. Not around him, through him. I saw it with my own eyes, light bending like water through a prism, casting small flares across the glass in front of me. And just like that, he was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. For a second, everything held its breath. The agents, the lawn, even me. Then the alarms blared. Phones began to ring. Radios screamed back to life. But inside my office, my TV flickered twice and went black. My phone stopped vibrating, and both clocks, wall and screen, stayed frozen, like nothing could make them move again. I stood there crying, my hand against the cold glass, staring at the empty patch of grass where he'd been. I remember whispering, "Why?" But no one answered. Only the faint echo of boots and confusion filled the air. Someone behind me finally entered the room, one of the junior aides I'd known for years. "Martha, are you okay? What did you see?" she asked, eyes wide, voice trembling. I don't know," I said, "but I think I'll never be the same." This is the part I remember. The part where faith felt like oxygen and fear felt like truth, because deep down, even as the noise returned, I knew I had seen something no one would ever believe, and maybe something no one was meant to. And still, part of me knew it wasn't over yet. The next morning, the White House didn't feel like the White House. You could tell before you even walked through security. The air had changed. Agents stood closer together, eyes sharper, voices quieter. The same men who used to joke about football at the front gate didn't say a word to anyone that day. There was something in the air, not fear exactly, but the kind of unease that comes when people know something happened but can't explain what. When I reached my office, I noticed that my nameplate had been polished. That never happened before. I don't know why, but that small thing made me feel watched. I sat down, tried to turn on my computer, but the monitor blinked twice and froze on a black screen. I didn't even bother calling IT. There were other noises around me, radio chatter, boots pacing, phones ringing in rooms where I knew no one was answering. Every clock I saw had been reset. I thought I was ready to tell the truth about what I'd seen. I wasn't even close. 2 agents came in mid-morning, young, serious, polite, in the way people are when they already doubt you. They asked me to describe everything from the previous day: time, location, what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. When I mentioned the barefoot man on the south lawn, they looked at each other for half a second too long. That quiet exchange that tells you you've just crossed into the part they're told to ignore. "Ma'am, could it have been a reflection or a trick of the light?" One of them asked, tone practiced, almost gentle. I shook my head. "Reflections don't stop time," I said. The second agent smiled like someone hearing a child describe a dream. "Stress can do strange things," he replied. "I know what stress feels like," I told him. This wasn't that. They thanked me for my cooperation, closed their folders, and left. Just like that, the truth I carried became classified as imagination. That afternoon, they called me back for another interview. Same questions, same answers, same disbelief. This time, they even showed me a short security clip from the south lawn. Timestamp 9:37 a.m., the frame went white for exactly 1 second, then static. No barefoot man, no guards, just a flash and a hum. I asked them what caused it. They said, "Electrical interference." Why was only one camera affected? They didn't answer. By the end of the week, people started whispering about the glitch. No one said miracle, not once. Some said it was a network malfunction. Others blamed a solar flare. A few of the older staff, the quiet churchgoers, just shook their heads and said, "We felt something that day," but no one wanted to say what they felt. Not here, not in the most powerful building in the world. I kept one thing to myself. That night when I walked past the window, I saw the faintest shimmer over the grass, barely visible, like the air itself remembering light. I told myself it was nothing, but my heart didn't believe me. A week later, I couldn't resist. I drove by the south lawn just before sunset. The guards at the gate didn't stop me. I think they were tired too. The sky was a strange shade of silver blue, and the fountain sparkled like someone had poured gold into it. And there, at the far edge of the grass, I saw him again. He was quieter this time, or maybe the world was. The glow around him was softer, more human. He wasn't walking or gesturing, just standing still, hands at his sides, eyes turned toward the horizon. I don't know how, but I felt him looking at me, even from that distance. For a moment, everything I'd buried, fear, disbelief, doubt, just lifted. My hands stopped trembling. My breath slowed. It felt like he was showing me something without words, something my soul could understand, even if my mind couldn't. And then, just as the sun touched the fountain, he faded. Not vanished like before, but slowly, like light dissolving into light. That night, I cried again. But it wasn't the same kind of crying. It wasn't confusion or fear. It was gratitude. Once, a colleague asked me why I never told my story publicly. I just smiled and said, because what happened wasn't meant to prove anything. It was meant to remind us that even here, even in power, heaven can still touch the ground. And I mean that with all my heart, because I believe that man, that barefoot stranger who stood where no one else could, wasn't an intruder or a ghost. I believe he was sent, maybe not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for me, and maybe for everyone who still wonders if God ever walks among us anymore. When I think of him now, I think of how Jesus entered the world, quiet, unexpected, unnoticed by the ones who thought they'd recognize holiness when they saw it. I think of how light can visit even the proudest walls and not ask for permission. And I think of how mercy doesn't shout. It just stands there until your heart finally opens its eyes. Let us pray for those who still seek light in their darkest moments, for the ones who have power but lack peace, and for the ones who live in silence but carry truth in their hearts. May they see signs, not of fear, but of hope. May they understand that God's presence is not bound by titles or buildings or borders. May this nation remember that its greatness was never built on pride, but on grace. And may every heart that's still searching for proof finally learn what I learned that morning, that heaven doesn't knock, it enters quietly. Amen. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear what you think. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever felt that same stillness, that sense that time itself paused just long enough for God to whisper. Share this story with someone who might need to be reminded that faith is still alive in the places we least expect. And if you want to keep hearing stories like this, make sure you like this video and subscribe. It helps more people find the light. Thank you for watching. God bless you. And remember, sometimes the loudest miracle is the one that arrives in perfect silence.